I was delighted to get the opportunity just to share our experience on Kickstarter, and Larry invited me. So I'm the CEO of a company called Galvanic that has developed a product called PIP that managed to raise just over $100,000 on the US Kickstarter platform. What I'm going to cover this evening is giving a very quick overview of PIP, talk about the timeline and results on Kickstarter, some of the metrics and some of the do's and don'ts, and some of the stuff that you've kind of heard already I'll actually whittle through, so you're not getting it twice or if you like 3 times. So I guess one of the things I would say is that in business there's certain things you must do, and a lot of people in this room know about them in terms of startups and how you position yourself, and Kickstarter is actually no different. And somebody actually said to me once it would be worth, even if somebody wasn't going on Kickstarter, actually adopting what you've got to do to go through Kickstarter, because the process is very, very powerful. It can be painful as well. I had a full head of hair about this time last year, and it's exciting and it's challenging. And it's very rewarding, but it's not for the faint-hearted, and it will suit some companies, others it may not. But I'll share with you why we did and the approach that we actually took. So the first thing was, in any business, you've got to there's got to be a problem there that you actually want to solve, and with us, stress we positioned that stress as a global problem. We were on the US Kickstarter platform, so we actually focused in on the cost of stress in America and elsewhere, and the video that we made was could have been made anywhere, but it probably had a very much an international feel and an international look about it. And we positioned how and portrayed how we were actually how PIP would actually help manage stress, and it was a very simple message saying that PIP is a portable stress management solution that connects via Bluetooth to entertainment applications on iOS and Android devices, and the PIP helps make managing stress fun. That was the simple message, full stop, on the actual video. There's an awful lot more that we had to go through because we were a product, and while we did have some software attaching, what was actually very important, that we actually gave some science behind PIP. And basically, PIP, and this is the actual product here, it's a biosensor that measures galvanic skin response, which effectively is when you go into fight or flight mode, or you're stressed or anxious, blood will flow from the heart to the extremities, and one of the primary measures for your skin conductance will actually make you sweat is galvanic skin response. It's been around for probably about 100 years in lots of trials, and it's very well established. And what we were actually doing was actually taking that measure and effectively transporting it via an algorithm to applications where individuals can actually see, if you like, visualize their level of anxiousness or relaxation, and learn by way of biofeedback what actually helps them and makes them relax. What we did to validate that further and to give a bit of weight to it is that we had already hooked up with Cornell University, who were basically at that stage trialing it and using it. They made a mood lamp, which is effectively a lamp that changed the colours as a result of your level of relaxation, or your level as anxiety would change. It was important that we give the science behind the PIP because it was actually a product that was actually measuring something like galvanic skin response. We touched on the team. I didn't make the cut, and I was actually looking at the prerequisites for a video. I wasn't in the video, but what we actually had was somebody who was used to presentations, somebody who was effectively is on the board of Galvanic and actually made videos. So we were very lucky that we were able to get a high quality video made, if you like, in-house. And we did focus on the team, and we focused on the technologists and the scientists that actually exist within the actual company. If we'd filmed ourselves in the location where we were, free of charge, in Northumberland Road, it wouldn't have actually looked too well. So we had to actually transport most things and actually put them into the location we're in now, which looked very nice and white and clean. I think it broke down here. Sorry. Yep. So perception is very, very important, and it's critical, and we did move to a location that looked an awful lot better than we were currently in at that time. So what I've straight into Kickstarter, what we actually presented here is just a timeline, and some of this is about how not to do it. And our journey on Kickstarter started way back in July 2012, where we were actually over in the States with a different technology pitch. But we had actually got an early prototype of PIP with us, and we brought it in as an adjunct to meeting this VC, and they were very impressed with it, and they basically said to us, listen, you should actually go on Kickstarter. And I got miffed with that, because I thought it was a bit of a palm off, a bit of a fob off. We returned and we went back to the States again, where we were actually at a Quantified Self conference over in Stanford, and we showed PIP, and there was a lot of engagement and a lot of positive response to it. A lot of people had actually raised money on Kickstarters, and they had a breakout group that discussed the issues around, it was specifically Kickstarter and others, a lot around the actual administrative issues and hurdles you had to get over. But the more we actually thought about it, the more, and the more people we had actually met at that session, the more we realized that what the VC was actually saying to us was, this is interesting, but we're going to use the platform of crowdfunding as a funnel. So if you can, you prove that you have the capability of actually delivering this product, of making it, you've got the actual capability to do it. And the reality is that's what a number of VCs are doing, and many of you may already know that. And it's actually very, very smart. So we didn't get to press the button or decide that we were going to do it until March, and the reason being was that we were actually fundraising at the time. And there's an actual very interesting trade-off, I should say, between, I'm not sure what this keeps actually going on me, sorry. A trade-off in the timing of a Kickstarter campaign, and we were actually put a very compelling argument to somebody who was looking at funding us, that basically, this being a successful Kickstarter campaign, pre-delivery of product is actually a more valuable company than is a more valuable company after a successful Kickstarter fundraising. And we were put a compelling argument that we were going to raise the money, and best to get in now. And that made total sense, because you managed to raise sufficient money, you're in the game, and you've got a much better chance. Obviously, post a successful Kickstarter campaign, I guess that's another benchmark that you've actually passed. So we pressed the button in March. A lot has been talked about research, and the great thing is there's an awful lot of stuff online in terms of research, so it's actually out there. We were slightly different because we actually didn't have really another Irish company to actually discuss and talk to about going on to the US Kickstarter platform. We had to do an awful lot of research around Amazon, which effectively is used by Kickstarter to validate, if you like, the setup in terms of payments and otherwise. We had to put a serious communications plan together, but we fell down in a couple of areas. We did well in others, but we actually fell down in a couple of areas that I'll actually talk about. We had locked and loaded some tactics and some approaches that we would actually take throughout the actual campaign, and you need to have a campaign plan before you actually get into something like this. You need to understand the Kickstarter rules. There are some soft ones and some hard ones. You must support. The reality is that you're in it, so you actually should support other Kickstarter campaigns. And when you actually are up, you can see that it actually has the number of campaigns that you've supported. So it's very much about giving back and about supporting others that actually are involved in Kickstarter. There also is an old adage when you're actually, and you may very well have heard this, is that you've got to be very careful in terms of your own time, that you speak to the people that you want to speak to as opposed to the people that want to speak to you. You kind of got to lay that aside, because it's one where you're in the game and other people might seek your view and your assistance, and you're going to do it likewise. And we got some good information and some good intel from successful projects that we were able to link in with online as opposed to face to face. The pledges are very, very important, and where you actually pitch that, there's a kind of formula there, and it's one that we looked at the successful campaigns and how they were actually pitched, and had 1 or 2 changes to the pledge levels if required during the actual campaign, so it didn't look as if we were static. The video I have pointed to, which is very important, and I'll give some flavour and some statistics in terms of what our penetration was in relation to the video. And the other thing was actually trying to understand the profiles of people that actually go on to Kickstarter. And there's certain rules around how you'd go into this, and if you actually didn't look at how it all actually operates, is you'd actually look at the profiles and you can actually see the people who will support other projects. And you might on the one hand say, well, actually, now we know who they are, now we actually should approach them. Well, you just don't do that. That's not a done thing. Neither is the done thing where you actually try to push your own project by actually supporting another one and then putting comments on their campaign saying, we've got a great product here as well that can actually work too. That's a bit of a no-no. We worked very, very hard over a period of 23 odd days. We launched it was formally on a Monday, but we went out on the Friday. And there's a lot of stuff that you hear about going out early and building your community early, which is absolutely critical. From our perspective, we wanted to wait till we actually got approval from Kickstarter, because we were an Irish company and we were actually raising it on the US Kickstarter platform. So we actually weren't able to get out early and build that community, which is critical. We could actually talk to friends and family, but in terms of really putting it out there, we didn't actually do that. And that's one of the key pieces with us that it actually made it that bit harder. But every day there was a meeting, a daily action plan to watch for the pledges, and then to actually see what we needed to do to change things, mix them up a bit. We had, from the date that we started to the end date, which I'll talk about in a minute in terms of the extended delivery, about 23 updates. That is probably, it's light in terms of updates. And the critical piece is that perhaps one of the mistakes we made is where you've got to feel that you've got to have really, really heavy content to show progress. You've got to show progress, but it doesn't need to be detailed content. People want to know the progress they're actually making. That is critical. One of the things that we might have done if we were doing it all over again, and I've absolutely no appetite for doing a second Kickstarter campaign, certainly we're not within this business, but it was very good for us, and it was very good for us in terms of the profile it gave us. The money was helpful, but it wasn't, if you like, our key aim. But I would have actually had a number of updates and progress locked and loaded. So I wouldn't necessarily have given all the sweeties out at once in terms of this is, where we've taken the project right now. And the smarter message would have been, if you can give a compelling argument, which we did have, which we had a solution to a problem, a global problem, with a very neat piece of a very neat biosensor, which was consumer friendly, and we showed how we'd actually taken it this far. Perhaps to make it easy on ourselves, we actually would have had some updates already locked and loaded, because you need all the help you can actually get, because it's 24 hours a day where you will find yourself that you're actually waking at 5 in the morning, and the first thing you do is actually look to see how many pledges there actually are. And the other thing that you will get is you'll get unpledges. So the first unpledge that I got, I looked and said, this is absolutely ridiculous. Who is this person? It's outrageous. This is a great product. And God love, there was a lady who actually was hugely apologetic and said, I'm really, really sorry. I need the money to actually, my dog has got to be brought to the vet. So it felt actually terrible, because I was actually dishing her because she'd actually unpledged. But what happens is that other products come on, and it meets the need of somebody who's got a monthly amount to actually pledge. And you get the benefit of that because yours has actually come along. And on that point as well, you've got to look forward, you can't look back. Our timing was, we were told not to launch in summer, but we had decided that we were going to go, and why? Because we didn't want to wait till September, October. We wanted to actually do it, and we felt we had a good chance of actually getting there. And we understood Independence Day, but we didn't understand Independence Week. So the States just shut down for a week, and it was like, well, that's not the brightest move on our part, and kind of we failed the IQ test a bit in terms of so I wouldn't recommend launching during the summer. We succeeded in raising 104,000. It's actually 103,916. So I'll self-confess to round up by 84 odd bucks, and which was great. And then the fun starts. We had set out that we were going to have a delivery date of February the 14th, and we revised that delivery date for a number of right reasons, not least we actually wanted to get the sensor discs, which actually gold-plated sensor discs, which are key for conductivity of sweat in the fingers, and we've absolutely nailed that. That took us a lot longer, and some challenges in terms of the actual mold. But where we're at now is we're delivering product after an awful lot of activity, an awful lot of personalised emails. We probably could have done better in terms of social media, but we did have social media campaigns. We had a website that's not as good as our website now. It worked. We had about 2,000 hits to our website. We probably should have had more. But one of the things that was very important to us was the actual video. And I'll explain now, I guess, how it actually did work for us and some of the stuff that we actually learned along the way. I talked about some of the actual results. 104,000 raised, 555 odd backers, 487 PIP sales, average pledge amount raised, significant media coverage, which is still standing to us today, to people, where we can actually point to that as a starter for 10. The approach to the actual media coverage is one where we actually took advice, which was old advice, which was when you want to launch something in, let's say, Ireland, you give the story to, one or two people and exclusively. And we gave it to 3 entities exclusively, not in Ireland, because, and I won't point to who it was here in terms of the right of the page. On the Friday, and then we started to work hard to go out to others. The right way is to pick a number. You won't probably get more than 7, but you could certainly get 5. Ask them to actually hold off until you're actually pressing the button, and then press the button. Don't press the button if you actually want to do something globally at 8 a.m. Irish time. Press it at 8 hours on, in terms of most likely West Coast, in terms of the States. So there was those small things can actually be important, because it actually then, people actually, when they go in to first thing, get up on a Monday morning, it's actually there, and it's and it's recent. We've managed to get an awful lot of inquiries around the globe, which some of them are very, very exciting, where people have got it immediately and wanted to be involved and see how we could actually collaborate. And some of those are actually coming to fruition, and 1 or 2 are already done but not announced. The first Irish company to raise over 100,000, which is nice to be able to say. The Kickstarter metrics that I've shown, some just to give an example of what you get. Some information, you get a respectable amount of information. You've got to work for some of it as well. But on the left-hand side, it points to the source of support, and a lot of the support was Kickstarter diehards, if you like, and call them, where it is quite technology focused, and that's why we actually did go with Kickstarter. But by way of example, just to show how hard you've got to work, I've just taken the Mashable numbers, where they've got about something like 5.4 followers in terms of social media. we managed to get into them through a connection, and you've got to beg, borrow, and steal connections, and you've got to push it wherever you actually can. But we got in, and they made a video. They didn't use our video. They actually made a video, a presentation themselves about PIP, and that led to 1,600 shares and 28 pledges. Now, 28 pledges. But if there's more people here that know about social media and penetration rates, and you just got to work very hard to get people to actually move from it actually being reported or being put online to actually pledging. And your message is very, very important. And that's the reason why I kind of point to the top right page. The other bit there is, Singularity Hub, which we'd never heard of as well, were hugely supportive. And there's the ripple effect. Die Welt reported on us, which has been very good from us from a German perspective, because we were at a conference recently in Berlin, and a number of people had actually heard us, and there's a large number of stress experts, inverted commas, close inverted commas, in Germany, and they have been approaching us over the last while. The top right is the video pledge penetration rate, and our research has shown that it's anywhere between 0 and 5%. 0 is obviously not too good, 5% is actually very good. We weren't sure how well we were doing, and we're kind of frustrated in the early days, but effectively for our penetration was if 30 people looked at the video, one person effectively pledged. The top would have been 20 people and one person pledging, and where we learned the hard way in terms of how fast at times we actually had to run during the campaign was that a very strong product that you'd all know, that remained nameless, that raised over $200,000 in the last 18 months, basically needed 150 to 200 video views to get a pledge. And that said to us, our message was, we were right on with the message, we were spot on with the video. I'm not quite sure how many people watched it to the end, but I'd say it was probably the traditional fall off. But we didn't have enough people coming on to the actual site and looking at the actual video, and that's critical. And that was a function of not doing it much earlier and building that community, which is absolutely critical. The other piece to just share is what the stats look like from a support perspective, where it's no surprise that the US was the highest, if you like. Interestingly enough, the UK figures, if you look at successful UK Kickstarter fundraisings, the US is something like 23%, and that's not a surprise. But I understand that Kickstarter is coming to Ireland, or there's talk about it. It's either I'm talking too much, or the computer actually doesn't, or too fast, and the computer doesn't like me. But I think that the mix will actually change, because if somebody's over in the States and they're actually looking at a euro amount, and if somebody's over in the States looking at a sterling amount, it's a different dynamic. So it'll be interesting to see how that translates. But I think it'll be quite. I think we'll be similar or even lower, if you like, in terms of a euro Kickstarter platform. But that I could be proved wrong on that. Kickstarter learnings, I've touched on a number of them. The homework and research is critical. Reaching out early is really important. Success is hitting a reachable target, because first up, at the end of the day, you'll be able to say, we actually raised what we wanted to raise, and we raised it successfully. People just want to hear success. It's not necessarily the actual amount. That's telling me I've actually spoken too long. It's not the amount per se, it's the success. And there is a sweet spot where people like to be associated that was said earlier with success, and will actually really, really support you more because they see it as being a runaway train. A comms plan and a media list. We actually didn't have a media kit until day 5, which made it much easier for people to report, whether it actually be photographs of the PIP, the video, and then verbiage, which was actually important. The communication with the backers is very important, and even to this day, it was interesting to hear some of the personal touch, but our Kickstarter product is going out, the PIP is actually going out as I speak, and 487 supporters have got a specific letter. And while it's typed, I've actually put together an individual note tailored to each of those individuals to show I've actually taken the time to be, by way of the written word, by hand, to thank them and draw something from we know of them, where they're located or otherwise, but to show that we really, really did appreciate their support and appreciate their support. That communication with backers continues. We've got a marketing manager in now that's got rich information and is able to get feedback and able to get groups together where, in terms of giving us feedback on product and indeed suggestions. Don't underestimate the preparation, but don't let it frighten you. But if you do the homework and you get out there early and you've got a compelling case and you've got the capability, you'll get there. I've said about don't launch in summer. I put down don't ignore feedback. It's free. There's certain things that we're doing now and that we hadn't necessarily thought of, probably should have. By way of example, somebody came back to us immediately saying, this should be in every dentist in the country. And as a result of that, we're actually trialing PIPs with a large dental anaesthetic company because they actually we sent it them and they actually loved it, so they're actually trialing it at the moment. There's other feedback that you get that you will change how you're actually approaching something. Perhaps we didn't have a research pack. As a result of that, we actually went after a number of universities, specifically tailoring to go after them, and they actually came back positively and pledged. It's the Windows of the world. You can. And if you make a mistake, it's going to be seen. It's going to be seen worldwide. That's the great thing, and it's the beauty about Kickstarter. But it's one thing you've got to remember, and you are going to get comments. There are some serial Kickstarter supporters that basically it is, they pledge. And they let you know how they actually feel. And there's some of them will be well known, and it's great because, one or two of them have actually pledged and supported us to keep you on your game. And if you don't communicate them, they actually let everybody know that you're not. So it really, really does keep you on your game. And last, I've pointed to it already in terms of sleep. You'll enjoy the sleep afterwards, but it is pretty intense, but very rewarding at the same time. Shin Shin. Yep.
How did you get access or find out who you should contact in those international media?
Yeah, it's a lot of research where we actually gave somebody the title of community manager. He was a certain Scott Ingram who actually wanted to go and travel the world, and he was advised he's going nowhere, and he was actually told to start putting a list together. So we actually did spend a lot of time identifying areas, segments, and bloggers, writers. The issue is we didn't get to them quick enough, and what we ended up doing about 10 days into the campaign was we actually got a digital media company to actually, if you like, I read a lot about virtual assistants, if you like, and effectively that's what they were doing for us. In multiple, if you like. So we had actually identified the targets, as in whether it be people who are actually, whether it be bloggers, whether it be by way of Twitter, and going after them. A lot of the biggies, we tailored specific content and emails to try and actually hook. And there was like a courting process, and there was a number of people who ended up tweeting or retweeting as a result of that relationship, where you'd see what they were actually tweeting and then get into them. And there were a couple of them that were that managed to that retweeted, and they're a good name, and they got us out there.
So did you find Twitter good avenue to get it?
Which?
Did you find Twitter a good avenue?
Twitter, but our social media campaign was nothing what it actually could have been and should have been, and Twitter is, but it's one where if you've targeted a number of key ones, and there's actually an in, and I should know the individual's name, and forgive me forgetting, but he's the 4-hour everything, American, Tim Ferriss. And that was one that there was where he managed to give us if you like, a support or a like, which we had actually made a bit about, and it's quite tactical. We were tactical because we didn't put the time into it, because we couldn't, because we should have been doing it 2 or 3 months in advance, and we actually weren't. And that, if it's the one big learning is to actually is to get out there early to get the support. And go like that, as opposed to we ended up going like that. And once you get out there and you've got a couple of bullets still loaded, to ensure that you can give that push, if you like. And there were certain areas that we actually didn't cover that we should. And I'll give you one area, and it was Scott that actually tweaked it. Was KickTrack is a reporting system separate to Kickstarter, and there's a ranking system, and it's interesting where you actually pointed to, were there any? I think it was 98 or 99% in terms of pledges that were actually kept. But one of the ways that where we actually did the research, we saw on KickTrack, you get pushed up by way of the actual number of pledges as opposed to the actual the dollar pledges. So the benefit of actually approaching a group of supportive youngsters who will actually pledge up to 5 books can be huge to get you up to the top of that, where you can actually get some reasonable traction. So there's a number of very open, and just once you do a bit of research, there's a number of tricks that are very much above the line that you can use to work for you. We found some of those along the way, as opposed to, even with the research that we actually did. Yo. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It was what were others doing? What did others look like? And those larger ones, and we got some support from areas that surprised us, and we got support from areas that didn't surprise us, because if it's in somebody's interest to make sure that there's actually a successful campaign for a product that they'd actually like to be involved in at some stage in time in the future, well, then they'll do what they can to actually get it there. But we looked at pledges and we said, what would we do during a campaign? And it would be, we've got an entry level, and you've limited the number of the entry level. Well, you extend the entry level if that's where everybody's actually going to. The other bit I would say is, when you're, another bit that we learned, when you're putting your pledges together, they might sound great, but you've got to make sure that you can deliver on the pledges. What do I mean? We were able to deliver on PIP. Yes, it was delayed for all the right reasons, but we had actually said the first pledge was 79 books, and you got an application free with it, so the Loom application. And then the next level was a PIP and 3 applications. But we actually hadn't sat down and said, well, actually, so in terms of us delivering differentiated pledges based on applications. We need to get 1 application there and 3 applications there. And we sat down and said, well, how are we going to do that? Well, you can give tokens for iOS, but you actually can't do that for Google Play. So what we ended up doing, and we declared it recently to people by way of updates, is that people are actually getting in the post who actually pledged for the 3 applications. They're getting the 3 applications. They're getting 4 applications. Everybody's getting 4 applications, but the people who pledged the higher amount, as in the next level, are getting $10 back. And that was a $10 note in each one go back. There was no other way around it. We had actually looked at getting money back via Amazon. That wasn't actually going to work. We looked at actually getting tokens. That wasn't work. So you got to join up. We didn't. We said, listen, that looks great. We'll riddle it. But we almost didn't riddle it, and we had to find quite a crude solution. But nobody is actually, nobody has kicked back on it. Well, actually, we did. We got one person saying, "I'm in the UK. What am I going to do with $10?" But the pledge was in dollars, so we gave it in dollars. Yep.
Was Kickstarter your more favourable option over other possible options like open innovation or licensing options to existing tech companies who had a supply chain infrastructure in place?
It was because it gave us. I guess what we ended up doing was we threw 100 different fishing lines out. Or a large amount of fishing lines out to see what actually, if you like, what actually came in, as opposed to aligning ourselves to, if you like, a licensing play. So you're saying, did we consider other ways of actually raising no, but this was very deliberate in terms of actually getting it out there. Because if you do it the right way, those opportunities will actually, they'll actually come to you because, and isn't it very nice if somebody's actually coming to you? It's a different dynamic. It's a different dynamic completely. We had considered another crowdfunding platform, and one of the things that floored us a bit was that one of our pledges was a multi-pack, and Kickstarter actually ruled out multi-pack. So there was a nice play in terms of a pack of 10 pips or 5 pips, and they were the most that we could actually get for it was 2 pips. As in a pack of 2 pips. So I think Indiegogo actually don't have that limitation. And Indiegogo I don't think it's an all or nothing with Indiegogo, is it? Oh, okay. And Kickstarter that's where Kickstarter, the critical piece is. Somebody rang me today and said, just explained their product. And I said, well, what are you thinking about raising? They said, well, 100,000. I said, okay, it sounds like 30,000 is what you actually need to raise, because 30,000 hitting your Kickstarter and actually you're having a 300% subscription. The key one is actually getting over that line. There's an amount of money that you do need. If anybody's going on Kickstarter or a crowdfunding platform to actually raise the money to manufacture a product, and that's their sole source of funding, it's not the thing to do. You can, if you want to knock it out of the park, and I don't know what product people might be looking at, but if it's $500,000 that you actually need, it's a hell of a Kickstarter fundraising, and you never know who else is actually going to come on. You've locked and loaded and you're ready to go, and then with 5 days to go, 10 days to go, you find somebody else comes out with a product that is not in the space that you're in, but it's similar enough, and that's what that's what you're actually up against, because you're competing for a certain sum of money that individuals have on a monthly basis, and are prepared to actually do it. So there is a sweet spot in terms of the amount of money that you pitch it at, and I'd be counselling everybody, if they're going to go a crowdfunding platform route, have other sources of funding, but make sure that you get a target, you hit it, you put a target down that you can nail. That's the definition of success. And sorry, on that one as well, I think the States is great because they accept failure. the Irish Psychic, if there's a crowdfunding platform in Ireland, we actually, unfortunately, we can't get over the actual failure aspect. They celebrate it in the States. In Ireland, they actually don't. So I think it would be welcomed in the States. But I think Kickstarter platform comes to the Irish community. Unfortunately, the American Psyche isn't actually going to follow. So I'd say put a level that you're going to nail. Yeah. That's a great question. I would. I don't have that number, but if you were, I would say, sorry, in terms of running the actual campaign itself.
Also, let's say the customer service afterwards. So if you take that £100 that you raised,
Yeah.
what's the cost and the continuing cost of raising?
Yeah, I'd say that if I park the Kickstarter funds and Amazon funds, which I think came to something like 8 or 10% around that, if I was to all in put what the cost was, the video cost us what was that cost, and and if you go online, you actually look at the video, it was a very, very good video. So we actually got that at cost, which was that was massive, absolutely massive. If I park the people cost, I would say it probably cost us with the digital agency. I would say it probably cost us somewhere between 5 and 10. I say 10 grand. It was definitely 10 grand. But the answer that I was going to give you to the question that you weren't going to ask is that I guess if you lock and load Kickstarter campaigns, a very interesting exercise would be the actual amount of money that is made by people in terms of soup to nuts, from product build to meeting Kickstarter commitments, what the actual cost of that is. I wouldn't have thought that there'd be too many people that would actually be knocking up a sizable profit as a result of it. So it kind of then points to the money is good, but certainly with us, it was about profile. Good.